Ethan had always found comfort in the ordinary. He was the type of boy who preferred quiet corners over crowded rooms, old books over parties, and the steady hum of routine over the unpredictable twists of adventure. His life was peaceful, predictable, and, for the most part, undisturbed by grand emotions. That all changed one summer when his family decided to spend the season in a quaint seaside town, a place that would alter his world forever. The town was small, tucked away from the hustle and bustle of the city Ethan was used to. It was the kind of place where time seemed to slow down, where people smiled at each other in passing, and where the salty scent of the sea filled every corner. It wasn't exciting, but it was beautiful in its own way, with cobblestone streets, brightly painted cottages, and endless skies that stretched over the horizon. Ethan had expected to spend the summer the way he always did, quietly, keeping to himself, with only his camera as company. Photography was his passion, his way of seeing the world, capturing the small moments that often went unnoticed. On his second day in town, while wandering aimlessly through the narrow streets, Ethan found himself drawn to a small cafe on the edge of the pier. It was a charming place, with ivy crawling up its stone walls and tables that spilled out onto the sidewalk. Inside, the air was filled with the rich aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries. It was there, sitting at a corner table, that he first saw her. Lily. The name suited her, he thought later, for she was as vibrant and full of life as the flowers that bloomed in the summer sun. She sat by the window, a book in hand, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her face. There was something about her that caught Ethan's attention, something in the way she seemed completely absorbed in her reading. Oblivious to the world around her, he snapped a picture, almost instinctively, capturing the moment before it slipped away. He hadn't expected her to look up, but she did, catching him in the act, her green eyes locking onto his with a mix of surprise and curiosity. Embarrassed, Ethan quickly lowered his camera, muttering an apology. But to his surprise, Lily smiled. "Do you always take pictures of strangers?" she asked, her voice light, teasing. Ethan felt his face heat up, unsure of how to respond. "Only when they look interesting," he managed to say, half joking, though he instantly regretted his words. To his relief, she laughed. "Interesting, huh? I'll take that as a compliment." She closed her book and gestured to the empty chair across from her. "You can join me if you want. That way, you won't have to sneak around with your camera." It was the beginning of something Ethan couldn't have anticipated. He sat down, more out of curiosity than anything else, and they began to talk. At first, the conversation was stilted. Small talk about the weather, the town, their plans for the summer. But as the minutes ticked by, something shifted. Lily had a way of drawing him out, asking questions that made him think, sharing stories that made him laugh. She was different from anyone he had ever met. Where Ethan was quiet and introspective, Lily was bold and adventurous, full of ideas and dreams that seemed too big for the small town they found themselves in. As the days passed, Ethan and Lily began to spend more time together. It started with casual encounters, bumping into each other at the cafe, walking along the pier in the evenings. But soon, it became something more deliberate. They explored the town together, discovering hidden paths that led to secret coves, watching the sunset from the highest hills, and lying on the beach at night, staring up at the stars. Lily had a fascination with the sky. She would point out constellations, tell stories about ancient gods and mythical creatures, her voice soft and dreamy as the waves crashed against the shore. Ethan, for his part, would listen, entranced by the way she could make the simplest things seem magical. He found himself taking more pictures than ever before, not just of the town, but of Lily. She was always moving, always alive, and he wanted to capture every moment of it. One evening, after a long day of wandering, they found themselves sitting on a cliff that overlooked the sea. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the air was warm, carrying the scent of salt and flowers. They sat in comfortable silence, the only sound the distant cry of seagulls and the gentle lapping of the waves below. "You know," Lily said suddenly, breaking the quiet, "I've always wanted to travel the world." Ethan turned to look at her, surprised. "Really? Where would you go?" "Everywhere," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Paris, Rome, Tokyo, Cairo. I want to see everything, experience everything. There's so much out there, and I don't want to miss any of it." Ethan smiled, though a part of him felt a pang of sadness. She shrugged, her expression turning thoughtful. "I guess fear, maybe, of leaving behind everything I know, of not having a plan. It's easy to dream about it, but doing it, that's something else entirely." "You'll do it," Ethan said quietly, with more certainty than he had expected. "I can see it in you. You're meant for something bigger than this place." Lily looked at him, her smile softening. "What about you, Ethan? What do you want?" He paused, unsure of how to answer. No one had ever asked him that before, not really. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I guess I've never thought about it much. I've always just gone with the flow." Lily nodded, as if she understood. Maybe that's okay too. Not everyone has to have it all figured out. They stayed like that for a while, the sun sinking lower into the horizon, casting the world in golden light. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt a strange pull, a desire to step out of his comfort zone, to follow Lily wherever she went, to see the world the way she saw it. As the summer drew to a close, Ethan and Lily both knew that their time together was limited. The days seemed to slip away faster, each one more precious than the last. They tried not to talk about it, but the reality of their impending separation hung over them like a shadow. On the last day of summer, they returned to their cliff by the sea. The sky was clear, the stars shining brighter than ever, and the air was filled with the bittersweet scent of goodbye. Neither of them wanted to say it, but it was inevitable. Lily turned to him, her eyes glistening in the moonlight. "I'm going to miss this place," she said softly. "And you." Ethan's throat tightened. The words he wanted to say stuck somewhere between his heart and his mouth. Instead, he reached into his bag and pulled out a small envelope. "I made something for you," he said, handing it to her. Lily opened it carefully, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside was a collection of photographs, moments they'd shared throughout the summer. The two of them by the sea, laughing under the stars, walking through the town. Each picture was a piece of their story, frozen in time. Lily's eyes filled with tears as she looked through them. "These are beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you." Ethan swallowed hard, fighting the urge to pull her close. "I wanted you to have something to remember this summer by." "I don't need pictures to remember," Lily said, her voice thick with emotion. "I'll never forget." They sat there for a long time, neither of them speaking, both knowing that this was the end of something special. When the time finally came to leave, Lily stood up and looked at Ethan one last time. "Goodbye, Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Goodbye, Lily," he replied, his heart aching in a way he hadn't expected. And with that, she was gone, disappearing into the night, like a dream that slipped away upon waking. The days that followed Lily's departure felt hollow to Ethan. He returned to his routine in the city, the familiar rhythm of his life resuming. But something inside him had shifted. It wasn't just that he missed her, though he did, achingly so. But more than that, it was as if the colors of his world had dulled. The city, once bustling and alive, now felt gray and muted. He walked through it as if in a daze, his camera resting unused in his bag, his fingers itching to capture something, but finding nothing worth remembering. He'd never felt like this before. Ethan was used to being alone, and he had always been fine with that. But now, his thoughts constantly wandered back to Lily, her laugh, her stories, the way she made him feel alive in a way he hadn't known was possible. He found himself rereading their old messages, scrolling through the pictures they had taken together, each one bringing a wave of nostalgia that washed over him, leaving him adrift. Weeks passed, and though Ethan tried to throw himself into his photography, into his studies, into anything that might distract him, nothing quite filled the void she had left. They still texted, exchanged the occasional call, but the conversations were brief, surface level. Lily had gone back to her life too, back to her small town, her dreams of adventure still just out of reach. Their worlds were once again separate, connected only by the thin thread of memory. It wasn't until one quiet afternoon, as Ethan was sorting through old photographs, that he realized something important. He had spent so much of his life observing the world from behind a lens, capturing moments, but never truly living in them. Lily had shown him that. She'd lived so fully, so openly, that it made him question his own way of being. End of story. To listen to such interesting love stories, please subscribe and like our channel.